was a horrible, murderous human being. And he did some really nasty things, and I'm going to talk about them. He built a torture castle. There you go. If you don't want to hear about ways that somebody killed people and messed up things, just don't watch this video. It's not for you. I am willing to be as graphic as I am comfortable with. So, I don't know everyone's comfort level. I'm just letting you know. It's going to have certain content that may make you uncomfortable. I don't think there's anything like rape-wise, but he does really fucked up things. So, just letting you know now that you know what you're in for. So, for those still interested in this video, let's get started. Alright, so Holmes was like my first serial killer. I had heard of serial killers. I heard about different cases and stuff because I grew up with people watching that stuff a lot in my house. Certain individuals, and I at one point had the room up at the top of the stairs. I'm not in this house. I'm imagining it. So I was like pointing where it would have been. It's like you're down in the main level, and like the TV was right there, and then at the top of the stairs was my room. And so like basically, when people would watch like documentaries about murder, I could hear all of it, and it used to give me nightmares. And now I do videos on it to relax. So we come full circle here. Anyways, when I read Devil in the White City in English class, that was the first time I'd heard the term psychopath, and that was when I really got interested in an actual specific person, like a serial killer. So, he supposedly, allegedly owned up to 27 kills, though people say, or speculate at there being more like 100 or 200. It's very hard to prove because he was really good about getting rid of a lot of the bodies. So we don't know the exact number, and it's not possible to know. I mean, he had an incinerator in his basement, so come on. So people describe him as an urban serial killer, a con artist, and a bigamist. He had 3 wives, Clara, Murda, and Minnie. I'm sure it was not for a lack of trying to have more. He stopped America's first serial killer, though there are theories about people thinking he's Jack the Ripper. I disagree. We will get into Jack the Ripper as well. Some of the references to Jack the Ripper from Devil in the White City, but it's probably not going to be in this video because I don't think I'm going to get to it in this video. So, he has been described as the most sensational American case of the same decade, and in some ways more sensational than Jack the Ripper. Holmes is a kind of grim landmark in social history, but his sadism was far more cold and calculating. So a lot of what I just described was from a quote by Colin Wilson in Criminal History of Mankind. So H H Holmes and his murderous activities arose at a time seen as the Gilded Age, a time of progress, industry, enterprise, and technological advancement, which is part of what makes this case so fascinating. With cities quickly populating, people were not equipped for investigating crime, particularly in a time before forensic technology came to fruition. So, Chicago sort of setting the scene a bit. In Devil in the White City, Erickson talks about a general rise in crime, mainly stemming from robbery and jealous lovers turned violent. However, those of Holmes or the Ripper's ilk were of a different breed entirely. It's a direct quote. Men shot women, women shot men, and children shot one another by accident. But all this could be understood. Nothing like the Whitechapel killings that occurred. Jack the Ripper's 5-murder spree in 1888 had defied explanation and captivated readers throughout America who believed such a thing could not happen in their own hometowns. And that is, again, from Devil in the White City. These new criminals also came at a time when Erickson says, everywhere one looked, the boundary between the moral and the wicked seemed to be degrading. The book also references the Lizzie Borden murders and that's the case I'm covering. And we'll see how long it takes for me to get it out, but I will get it out as soon as possible. Because he is another one that I find really fascinating, and they kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly to me. So, anyways, again, Chicago was rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1871 and became the stage for Chicago's World's Fair and the opportunity for H H Holmes to capitalize upon in his quest to murder. The formal opening happened May 1st, 1893 for the World's Fair. It was to serve as an opportunity for Chicago to alter the notion that New York was the capital of social refinement and culture. Chicago being a place of industry, technology, and now seeking to show that they also possess culture. Some have described him as the most heinous criminal of the age, according to Harold Schechter, author of Depraved, which is the other book I've kind of looked at a little bit for this case. And Depraved is, again, the shocking true story of America's first serial killer. So Holmes, or Herman Webster Mudgett, man of many names, but Holmes was one of his aliases. It was Henry Howard Holmes, or H H Holmes, though he has others, and they will be mentioned in my coverage of him. He was a twisted, dark, and sadistic man, a murderer and a criminal, a con artist and a serial killer. He possessed a cool manipulativeness, able to size people up and exploit their weaknesses easily. So that's one of the things I find so fascinating about him, is he can just manipulate people into doing what he wants them to do. So about Holmes and his childhood. Holmes was born in New Hampshire in 1861. His father was Levi Morton Mudgett and mother Theodore Page Price. Holmes was described as being a mama's boy. In his earlier years, he already held a strong fascination with death and skeletal structures, choosing his profession based on his unhealthy fascination. So childhood, early life. Appearance in early years: blue eyes, brown hair, smaller. Due to his small size as a child, he was mercilessly picked on by larger students in school. When Holmes was 5, on his way to school, he passed the doctor's office. This door was typically open, and he could smell odors, medical odors, from within. The doctor was rumored to hold a collection of amputated limbs and preserved heads, something that is described as something that Holmes was very scared of. Realizing this, some of the older boys dragged him into the doctor's residence, forcing him toward the skeleton he was really scared of. The doctor managed to return and yelled at the bullies to leave, but this experience stayed with him. This is what Holmes alleges, that it stayed with him, and this is something he says contributed to the way he became, but I kind of don't know if I agree with that. Anyways, and this is what he attributes to his obsession with human anatomy. The fascination which led him to, at 11 years old, carry out his own research experiments on salamanders, frogs, rabbits, cats, and stray dogs, as a young man often does. Just kidding. Only if they're destined to be a serial killer with an obsession with human anatomy. It is also important to mention that he typically preferred that these creatures were alive at the time of these experiments, which is really, really awful if you think about it. He is noted to have had a metal box which he stored various treasures in, which consisted of things he would keep from these experiments, like the foot of one creature or something of that nature. I mean, other stuff too, but that was something that he would think to put in his box, and that tells you a good amount about a person, if those are things that they treasure. I'm just saying. Other potentially early signs. It is also important to note that Herman's only friend in childhood, Tom, died tragically from a fall down the stairs during an excursion with Herman to some abandoned home nearby. So that's not suspicious at all. Sus. Holmes in his early years is referred to as Herman. It was fascinating to hear stories of the fire which destroyed Chicago while he was 11 years old, according to the book Depraved. Imagining the demonic flames eating away at flesh and reducing bones to ash, Holmes resonated playing the dutiful child role and imagined the flames taking his parents' lives. imagining he might make his escape from his parents. Either way, still creepy. I mean, this is according to a book that I just referenced. Some people don't agree with some literature, and that's okay. Descriptions, perceptions of Holmes. He was described as seeming insincere or shallow, though in other instances described as a charmer that fooled people and highly manipulative. Some say he betrayed a grown-up manner from a young age. People around him at the early age of 11 described him as a boy with a head on him and a lad with a future. Believed that was according to Depraved, Holmes in Chicago. Holmes seemed to idolize Chicago a bit, which can be seen in this quote from The Devil in the White City. Chicago, it conveyed a sense that here at last was a city that allowed a broader range of behavior than was tolerated in Gilmanton Academy, New Hampshire, the town in which he was born and where he drifted through childhood as a small, odd, and exceptionally bright boy, and where, as a consequence, in the cruel imaginations of his peers, he became prey. I would say he's a predator, but whatever. Maybe it started out that way, I don't know. Herman Mudgett, as he was called, grew up in a small farming village in New Hampshire called Gilmanton, located in what is described as Lake Country, a more remote area with little access to newspapers and absent of the sound of train whistles or the smog of the city. Mudgett had two siblings, a brother and sister. Again, his father Levi, who was a farmer, as well as his father's father being a farmer. So, or having been. I don't know if he was alive at the time or not. It wasn't really mentioned. He grew up with religious parents. They were devout Methodists whose choice discipline consisted of sending their child to the attic, leaving them devoid of food, communication for the entire day, use of the rod was another form of discipline, and they would make him pray with then the mom would make them pray with her. And it's described in Devil in the White City that his mom filled the air around him with trembly passion. I just thought that was really funny. It is also noted that Herman only had one close friend, like I said, who died in his company. Thus, moving on. By 16 years old, Holmes completed school. Sounds like it was high school, obtaining a job as a teacher in Gilmanton, followed by Alton, New Hampshire. This is reportedly when he meets Clara Loverling. Also, I believe it is mentioned that for a while Mudgett worked at a grocery store run by Claire's family, or that her family ran a grocery store, and that marriage to her helped him to go to med school. So I also have always wondered if part of his reason for marrying her was financially motivated, because he seems to be this kind of person. You'll see throughout his life that a lot of his choices were greed and financially motivated. So they married July 4th, 1878, before a justice of the peace. Though their marriage began filled with passion, it chilled very quickly. Before long, Holmes would just disappear for days, leave. And though things did not work out for them, they never actually obtained a divorce and remained legally married throughout Holmes's other two marriages. By 19, Mudgett went off to college, to med school. According to Devil in the White City, he enrolled first in the medicine program at the University of Vermont in Burlington, but found the school too small, and after only 1 year moved to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, one of the West's leading scientific medical schools, noted for its emphasis on the controversial art of dissection. He enrolled on September 21st, 1882. Basically, he switched to a school with a program that specifically focused on something he had become obsessed with since his childhood, so that's not strange. Additionally, there was mention in several places of a dead baby found under his bed where he was living, his boarding place or something. When he was in college, that somebody found it. I've heard this in numerous different places. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing to think about. Also, it is noted that Holmes and a Canadian student in med school discussed how easily they might purchase life insurance, make the other person instance of his college life. While a junior at the school, he obtained a job acting as a traveler, assisting a book publisher, selling one book within northwestern Illinois, as one might expect of the money-hungry Holmes. He kept the proceeds before returning to Michigan to continue his medical studies. When recounting this experience, Holmes is quoted saying, "I could hardly count my Western trip as a failure, for I had seen Chicago." Just like, you're so old. I don't know, I find him funny in a messed up way. Holmes went on to graduate by June of 1884. Though his college career was mediocre at best, he did manage to graduate and sought employment in hopes to begin practice. Following graduation, he worked a traveling job with a nursery company with headquarters in Portland, Maine. This position led him to various towns, landing him in Moores Forks, New York. He managed to impress the trustees of a fine grade school by the same name, and was hired to act as a school principal. They found his gentlemanly manners impressive. I thought that phrasing was so funny in the book, that specific line, so I made sure to keep it. He worked in this capacity for like a year. At some point, it was rumored that the boy went missing from Moores Forks School, a boy that was last seen in Mudgett's company. So he's still going by Mudgett, though Mudgett insisted he brought the boy back to his house in Massachusetts. No investigation into the matter ever occurred, but it is fair to insinuate, based on Mudgett's pattern and swift departure, that Mudgett might have been responsible for such a disappearance. Many people at Moores Forks simply believed and said, could not imagine the charming Dr. Mudgett causing him harm to anyone, let alone a child. Opens his medical practice following departure from Moores Forks. In Moores Forks, the idea of picking someone's death for life insurance came back to Mudgett. It is said that he paid a visit to a former classmate who also happened to be less flush with cash, devising an insurance fraud scheme, one which Mudgett brings up in his own memoir. A plan characterized as impossibly complex and gruesome. The scheme involved recruiting several other accomplices. And when I was reading this stuff, I was thinking about this rule in this podcast I listened to called The Casual Criminalist, where they say, don't involve other people in your crimes, don't write down your crimes, stuff like that. And I feel like, don't involve other people in your crimes is a good one. So, don't involve other people in your crimes if you're going to do crimes. To fake the deaths of a family of 3, replacing each individual with a cadaver. When the bodies would appear later on in a state of advanced putrefaction, all parties involved would be able to cash in on that $40,000 life insurance and split it among conspirators. The amount of money would equal a sum greater than $1 million based on the value of money in the 21st century, and the scheme called for a considerable amount of material. Mudgett wrote, no less than 3 bodies, in fact. Old people talk. I'm just kidding. Meaning he and his friends somehow had to acquire 3 cadavers roughly resembling the husband, wife, and child. But then Mudgett believed that he foresaw no difficulty in getting these bodies, although there was in fact a national shortage of corpses for medical education, and this had at this point driven doctors to raid graveyards for freshly dead. So recognizing that even a doctor could not secure 3 bodies at once without raising suspicion, Mudgett and his accomplice agreed that each should contribute towards the necessary supply. Still, how are you gonna get that body, bro? I don't know, I just think this is very sus. However, owners of the homes boarded while in Moores Forks, and T.S. Hayes attested to frequently seeing Mudgett with large sums of cash, a fact which made Hayes very wary and suspicious of him. One evening around midnight, Mudgett neglecting to pay Hayes for his lodging, heading off to Philadelphia in hopes of securing a position at a drugstore and work his way towards being a partner or owner of such an establishment. I'm guessing this is after the child went missing. Sorry, some of my notes are not quite in the best order. He was unable to find a suitable drugstore position immediately and found himself working as a keeper at the Norristown Asylum. So a keeper sounds like something similar to an attendant. Such staff were important for determining patients' treatment of their quality or level of care in the asylum. Mudgett did not particularly care for this job, so much so that he reportedly quit within a few days of employment there. When describing this experience, this is what Holmes said. This, he wrote, was my first experience with insane persons, and so terrible was it that for years afterwards, even now, sometimes, I see their faces in my sleep. Coming from a guy who did the horrible things that this guy did, I find that strange. Holmes went on to work at a drugstore in Philadelphia. However, he had to flee when a child died from medication he had provided them. Seeing a pattern here. He made his way to Chicago, but having never passed their licensing exam in Springfield, would not be able to work as a druggist until doing so. It was at this time in July of 1886 that he chose to change his name from Mudgett to H H Holmes, a name inspired by Conan Doyle's novels on Sherlock Holmes. It was then in July of 1886, Holmes goes to visit Dr. E.S. Holton's drugstore. And that is where we are going to stop since we're already at 22 minutes in. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did. And look forward to part 2 coming